think we should start talking about the Kate picture.
Well, it's interesting. So The Sun, Kevin, says lay off Kate, and they have put an editorial on the front page. Now, this is very unusual.
With its record.
And the editorial says, today The Sun says this to all the social media trolls, idiotic conspiracy theorists and sniping media critics. Lay off Kate. Their furious attacks on the future Queen over her photoshopping of this family picture are not just absurd, they look like a bullying campaign. Which
of course, the Sun's never been accused of. The editor must be wanting an OBE. Must be fancying a gong. No, but in one way, they're right about the mad conspiracy theorists around the world. But the whole point of that picture was to counter the mad conspiracy theories. Yeah, so it backfired, enormously.
You'd have to be a slightly media critic to say that they've really, really messed up.
They really have messed up.
They have messed up, yeah. And it's plain. It's in everybody's eyesight that
the world was looking forward to this first photograph of Kate Middleton since we haven't seen her since Christmas Day. It's a very long time not to have seen her. We know how she's been very sick, and this should have been so. It could have been so easy. They could have somebody like Paul Clarke could have taken the photograph, but they've made a right flipping hash of it.
So I would say that the criticism is actually not being laid at Kate's door. I don't think Kate has done anything other than what many of us do. I've never used Photoshop, but of course on Instagram you'll use filters and not clay. You know, I wouldn't ever say this is an unedited photograph if I knew that I'd done edits to it. And I'm not sure that Kate ever claimed it was an unedited photograph. The trouble was that Kensington Palace is seen as a trusted source for photographs. And therefore the assumption is it's a genuine photograph. And then Kate comes out the next day and says, you know, it's my fault. I, like any of you, like to experiment with a bit of editing. The metadata apparently shows that this was photoshopped. But I don't think people are criticising Kate for that. I think they're criticising the palace
operation,
the PR, the very expert media people behind the Princess and Princess
but
of Wales.
Also the enormous amount of time it took for them to say something.
Exactly.
It took far too long. It came
out. They nipped
with...
it in the bud Sunday night and issued the original photo.
Easy.
When they recorded the original photo, it would have all been gone.
Actually, Instead, they let it drag on until the middle of the next morning.
The original photo, if the kids are standing in slightly awkward positions, like the authenticity and the relatability of that, is even better when you have a family photo.
Let's speak to professional photographer Paul Clarke, who has, even this year, been commissioned to photograph people like Princess Anne. Very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Did you look at this photograph immediately and think, wow, they were lucky to get everyone looking in the same direction with a massive smile on their face, picture perfect?
You know, taking photos of people is what I do every day. I create and edit photos all the time, and I do probably look at every prominent photo more closely than most people. And it was really obvious immediately that something was a bit unusual here. And it's also pretty obvious what happened as well. You know, anyone who's got kids knows how hard it is to get everybody smiling and looking great all exactly at the same time. And, you know, as a professional, it's not easy. The temptation is, and very often is done in family photography, to get the best picture of this person, this person, this person, paste them all together and then make good the joins. And if you make good the joins, as a family photo, that's pretty normal and pretty OK, except it wasn't done very well, and this is not a normal family photo.
Just to understand, though, because if you doing this professionally, are doing a big photo shoot for the front of a magazine, take loads and loads of photos, it would be quite normal, wouldn't it, for in post-production, for there to be a little bit of sort of smoothing out here and there with Photoshop. Is it different when you are doing a news photo, or is it different when you are issuing what looks like a simple family snap? You know, why is it OK for the pros to use Photoshop, but not OK for Kate to do it?
Ed, you're exactly right. Whether it's a professional image creator or an amateur, if that photo is being taken, received and understood as a news photo, there are some really strict rules that photographers adhere to, agencies and picture desks should adhere to. Largely that the photo was taken in one frame by a photographer present at the scene, and that's where we get our trust in news photography. Those rules are pretty strict. Photographers, even in recent months, have lost their careers by by putting out something which has got manipulation in it. I'm not going to give you a particular example, but it's a very, very serious thing. It can finish a news photographer's career to manipulate an image. What you saw here was what we call a PR image, a handout image, something that's been created by an individual for a story about themselves. And we must simply take every photo like that with a certain degree of scepticism, whether it's a palace or an ordinary family.
Mark Bukowski, you are a public relations expert and a crisis consultant. Would you label this a crisis? We had the purpose of this photograph to put to rest any idea that there was anything lingering with Kate. It made her look well. She looked physically well enough to be able to be surrounded by her children and cuddling them. What has happened 24 hours later is she is now apparently the one, according to The Sun, who is in the firing line, who is being bullied by critics. I don't think that it's Kate who is the one who's under fire. I'd say it's the media team around her.
Yeah, I'd agree. And, you know, you asked me whether it's a PR crisis. Well, if the Daily Mail runs it as a PR story on the front page of their newspaper this morning, you know that there's some trouble at mill. I mean, bottom line is there was an occasion, which is Mother's Day, which the royal family have always used to send out these sort of gooey pictures. And I guess they thought, we're damned if we do, we're damned if we don't. There'll be more questions asked if we don't issue something, and it's a great opportunity. So in the trade, we call it idea porn. Everybody thinks it's a great idea, and they don't think about the consequences, which I think that is hubristic, really, to think that, you know, people would be poring over this picture and obviously clearly saw the joins. And then everything reflects. I mean, great PR is when you don't see the puppet strings, when you don't see the moves, you actually, it seamlessly works. And I think where Kate has been, you know, the poster girl for the royal family, particularly after the Queen's passing, you know, she's done all the heavy lifting. And, you know, they haven't confronted some of these ridiculous conspiracy theories. They've just let things roll since December. You know, you and I don't believe Kate has been abducted by aliens. Unfortunately, there are millions of people out there who think she might be. And that's the sad world of unregulated media, which is social media, which is driving this story. And it continues to drive this story now. And it continues to, you know, extenuate the problems which they probably wouldn't have had because they have called, you know, for a period of allowing Kate to recover from her operation. They don't need to say any more, but they've sort of changed the way the royal family used to work, which is never explain, never complain. They've released, in my opinion, quite rightly, snippets of information about health, but of course now we demand more, and that puts pressure on the public relations department to do more. But this is also, in my opinion, a disjoint between the media comms side, perhaps, of the palace and also the social media folk who probably thought, this is great, let's spin this out, it's going to generate this great conversation and we're going to move the story on. Unfortunately, it hasn't. It's actually focused more on these ridiculous conspiracy theories, and it's gone around the world.
I have a slightly different theory to Mark's, although he's a crisis consultant. I've been on the inside of these kind of crises before. And what happens is, I bet you for days, weeks, the PR people have been saying to Kate and William, we need to do something, we need to do a picture, we need to say something, and they've been resisting. And then suddenly Kate says, I've got this photo, let's put it out for Mother's Day. And they think, oh, my gosh, thank goodness, let's go for it. And there'll be a press officer thinking, you know, well, I could say, you know, shall we check the photo? Is it the right photo? But at that point, the danger is you put her off doing it. So you just think, fine, look, finally she's agreed, let's put it out. Afterwards, they are kicking themselves that they didn't question it, but they didn't do it because they were so relieved she was finally willing to act.
Well, our hubby's not the easiest going. You know, he doesn't have a reputation for being the most easygoing person. So in that press operation where you somehow want to counter it and say, well, yeah, I'm not sure about this, I don't think he's just going to nod and say, you're quite right. It's not a normal operation.
No, of course, but the job of the Kensington Palace operation was to protect her from this. And to protect the family from this.
The photo out was protecting her from the speculation.
Well, it was a good idea.
Yeah, but she puts a picture out most Mother's Days, but they should have protected her, and they didn't. They didn't do their job, Ed.
But
I think that's a very
good idea.
But you know, they would have been thinking to themselves, you know, she's finally agreed, and you start saying big nitpickety about the photograph. Put her off again, we'll be put back a week.
Well, you could see also she might be particularly sensitive because she is recovering from a pretty serious operation.
Do you think that the palace should release the original photograph or set of photographs if it was a composite of a number of different that were laid over each other, which is one theory. And they should say, do you know what, this is the date it was taken on, and just lay out all the facts. Or do you think, as a professional photographer, do you think it's going to look so different that actually it's going to make the problem worse?
So I think if you'd asked me that question middle of Sunday morning, I would have said, yeah, stick it out, just get this, as we've heard, get it dealt with quickly. It's too late now. Right. If that was going to be released, the time was with the announcement that she'd done some editing and just put it there, and yes, maybe there's a tongue sticking out or a hand in a funny place, but that's fine. We'd all have accepted that. I think it's too late now, and it puts the palace and the princess really on the back foot. We're now demanding to see proof. And I think what this illustrates for me is that a photo is more than a photo. Sometimes it's, in this case, being seen as some form of proof, some form of evidence of something happening in the palace. And we're in a situation now where we're starting to demand proof from somebody who, frankly, should be left in peace to recover.
And Mark Bukowski, that we come back to the central point. This is a woman who is fairly fragile because she's had serious surgery that is serious enough that when she had it in January, we were told she would not be appearing again in public until after Easter. We saw her yesterday in the car. Oh, no, sorry, these are the pictures of her in Sandringham, Christmas. But we saw her yesterday in the car with Prince William. So we know she's out and about. If you were advising the palace this morning, would you say, reveal all the information, all the data, all the photographs? Or would you say, just wait until after Easter now?
I would personally wait, because you've got the pressure now of outside forces telling you how to message. You know, you can't kowtow to what the internet demands, for want of a better word. I mean, I go back to a previous point about the concept and the strategy behind that. I'm sure the press office are under pressure, and I'm sure they're seeing all the analytics of what's going on here. But you have, a man, Prince William, who's incredibly protective of his family. He said that. And also aligned to that is his... I mean, he's not the media-friendly prince, to a certain extent. He doesn't like the media. That's fairly obvious. So, he's very firm about what he wants to do. And I mean, I've had, clients who have, who haven't taken the best decisions because they have either a paranoia or a dislike for the media. And if you've got someone at the head of the organisation doing that, you're not going to run things properly. You're going to be reactive rather than positive. So if this photo had been, offered up, I'm sure people would have grabbed it, but then you've got to look at it and actually question. You've got to have a relationship with your boss, the man at the top, to actually be sensible, and possibly you've got to challenge them. And if you've actually sent out messages, about when you appear next, you've got to stick to those rules. But there's other ways of sort of dealing with the conspiracy theories without actually creating a conspiracy theory, by releasing a photograph that becomes a story. So it's those, in the world of actually, small steps or unintended consequences, the smallest little thing leads to big crisis. But, referring to the man at the top, if he doesn't like the media, then that's going to percolate down and make your job incredibly hard to do.
Paul, as a professional photographer, can you just give us all some advice on Photoshop? How the mistakes that were made in the photograph, where it appears that the part of the sleeve has been edited out for some reason, there's a zip that's misaligned. How do you get it right?
I mean, I guess the most obvious point is...
Get a professional.
Well, get a professional, or do as little as possible. If a tongue is sticking out, live with the tongue sticking out. If it's a pair of eyes that are closed, maybe just do a little work with the eyes. Never try and pass this off as being an accurate representation of a single frame. Never try and say it's a news story, obviously. But if you're doing it technically, do as little as possible and live with the reality of the wonderful humans that we are, with funny faces and...
Looking at this with your professional eye, you think this is actually genuinely a photo taken, all of them, all at the same time? There was just a little bit of fiddling around.
So The technical answer is I think there are several frames taken very quickly in succession here. Normal practice, those slight movements of arms, those slight movements of...
But all this stuff about they were totally different photo shoots in different times, all put together in some big collage, all rubbish.
I don't want to go all sort of Blade Runner on this, but if you zoom very closely into the eyes, you see reflections of the lighting that was used here. It's one of the things we do in the business to try and work out how a shot was lit so we can do the same thing. You can see quite consistent lighting in all of those eyes. Now, you're all going to start zooming in and pixel peeping to do that.
There we are.
But there is some... Ah, exactly that. So you can see that there's what we call a softbox, a big white studio light on to the right of those eyes, and a reflector on the left. Very normal portrait setup, but it's consistent across all of those. I mean, I think we're asking some of the wrong questions here. Instead of trying to sort of dig into this forensic examination, we look a bit more at all the picture editors, the news agencies who took this picture through their expert eyes and let it be published. And I think there are big questions here about other people other than the palace involved in that chain of scrutiny.
It shows how professional it was, though. Kate, they approached it having lighting there.
And a reflector.
Yeah, that shows how professional Kate and William...
He'd have just got his phone out.
No.
I would have thought
that speaks volumes, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Also speaking volumes, and you alluded to it, Kevin, is there will be lots of people who say two particular things. There is a couple within the royal family, or who used to be part of the royal family, who are not averse to publicity and probably might have handled this better, which is Harry and Meghan.
Yeah, they haven't got the blame yet, have they?
But there would also be supporters of Harry and Meghan who say the tabloids bullied them. But there was no outcry in the papers saying stop bullying Meghan. I mean, she's recently alluded to the fact that she felt that she was bullied, particularly when she was pregnant.
But she'll claim it by the Sun, amongst others. I think there's is that 5 pages, do you know, it's when you were flicking through it, on why we should lay off Kate.
Yeah.
There's some more lay off Kate.
I mean,
Let's keep laying off Kate.
You know, is there an hypocrisy here in the media?
But you know
Do you think
what
the
happened.
tabloids have bullied Kate in recent weeks?
No,
I don't.
I didn't think
not at all.
No.
I didn't
And
think so
Meghan
at
was
all either.
Meghan was referring to being bullied by women in particular on social media when she was pregnant.
But also in the media as well. I mean, there have been articles written about Meghan, which I think people call tantamount to bullying.
That's right.
As somebody who would be happy if we had a news blackout and never spoke of the royals at all,
Never gonna happen.
and just got shot of the royal family, I think some of the stuff on Meghan Markle does cross a line.
Yeah.
It sort of leaps over it a long way. Other pieces, I think, are justified. But nevertheless, if somebody's had rough treatment, you would say it's Meghan Markle, not Kate Middleton. No, absolutely.
The papers haven't bullied Kate at all.
I didn't think so either.
The early days of her relationship, when I think it was the Mail on Sunday, used to call her Weighty Katie. Do you remember?
Yes.
I can go back long enough to remember.
There was that jibe about because her mother was an air stewardess. To manual.
There was snobbery.
Although the treatment of Carol by the Crown was pretty dodgy, I thought. Did you think in the Crown the way which Kate's...
You do know that's just a drama, it's not a documentary.
I know.
Yes.
I'm afraid
it took so many liberties.
It isn't
And that's
panorama.
not controlled by the palace.